Hi guys, how's everyone? Welcome to yet another episode of What's Your Kryptonite. Today's guest is someone whose journey is about not having it all figured out, but someone who chose to rise despite it all. And in a world full of perfection, he's someone who brings vulnerability, truth, and the essence of being completely and utterly real. I have Ajlaan Sayani. Hi Ajlaan, how are you?
Very well. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I had to invite you. That went besides the, I think without saying, to be very honest. Your journey is something I wanted to talk about and I really want people to know as well. I want to start from the beginning. Tell me a little about yourself. Let's just start with that.
Okay, so going to the absolute beginning, I'm one of three siblings, the youngest of the three. My father was in the Air Force, my mother a homemaker. My brother is 11 years older than I am, and my sister is 16 years older than I am. So I was the child of the family. And what that meant was that I had four parents instead of two. And also what that meant was that everyone knew what was best for me. So as I was growing up, I was doing the things that people asked me to do rather than developing a sense of who I am and what I want to do in life. Yeah. So people always told me, ye kar lo, khush ho jaoge. So after school, I went to, and I did a BBA and an MBA because my brother went to IBA and my sister went to IBA and my brother-in-law went to IBA. So that's what I was doing. And as I did that, I found myself wanting to work in marketing. And as I graduated, I didn't get that marketing job. I ended up in a bank. And somewhere in there, I think I was still craving marketing because my brother really inspired me to that marketing is the way to go in FMCG. And somehow I made a transition from the bank into FMCG sales. Right. And I thought, this is close enough, so maybe this is where I can go. Right. But that transition just wasn't happening. And I found myself saying, okay, ye nahi ho raha, to chalo ek MBA kar lete hain. So I went back to IBA, I did an MBA. And then I got that marketing job. So here I am. I have everything that they said, कि ये कर लो, ये कर लो, ये कर लो, और तुम खुश हो जाओगे. Yeah. But as I sit there, I'm looking around and I'm still looking for that happiness. Yeah. And what I'm finding instead is a lot of stress and no work-life balance. Yeah. And we're selling these dairy products, nach ke, and and I don't feel connected with the work that I do, and I start asking myself, perhaps there is more to life than the lies that I have been fed, and that's when the journey started. Yoga wasn't the first thing that came my way. I started with many different hobbies. I picked up origami and art and looms and pottery and mountaineering and cycling, building sand castles at Seaview. But as I was doing this, I found that I kept moving from one hobby to the next. Yeah. I was very committed while I was doing something, but I found myself moving to the next thing. And then something else bright and shiny would come along and I would move to that thing and to the next thing and the next thing. Yeah. So I'm going to go into my story, if that's okay. Yeah?
Of course, yes.
So one fine day with my cycling buddies, right? Yeah. I started doing this long distance cycling. And we would hang out afterwards, नाश्ता कर लेते थे. तो उस वक्त Instagram भी आया था. This is 2016 that I'm talking about. And Instagram पे देखा एक बहुत cool तस्वीर. और इस तस्वीर में दो लोग एक साथ एक बड़ा cool सा pose कर रहे थे. अब उस वक्त मुझे ये नहीं पता था कि इसे हम एक्रो योगा कहते हैं. मेरे लिए तो बस ये थोड़ा सा cool था. तो मैंने अपने दोस्तों को जमा किया और हमने ट्राई किया. And we tried the most basicest of pose there is, the bird pose. And as we did this, we fell flat on our faces because we didn't know how to do this. But there was something about this. Unlike all the other hobbies that I had been doing, this is something that required more than me. This required other people. It required me to get together with other people and play to figure it out as I went along. So that there was an excitement to this that perhaps I didn't find in all the other hobbies I had. And so started our journey of acro yoga, because that's when we discovered that this is a practice called acro yoga. And since there were no teachers around, YouTube was our #1 resource to kind of figure out how these things are done.
Yeah.
And then we started getting better at what we were doing, until a point came when we started putting up our own photographs online. And then people started asking us, "Ki ye kya kar rahe ho tum log?" And that's when we said that this is a practice called acro yoga. And they were like, "Hame bhi karna hai?" So मैंने कहा आ जाओ कराते हैं, right? I'm not an instructor here, but because this practice brought me so much joy, I was willing to share this practice with whoever came my way to share that joy with them. So I would just call people over to my parents' house in the drawing room, and we would kind of figure this out. Until a point came when people from the internet started coming in, and my parents were like, "ये क्या हो रहा है यहाँ पे? कौन आ रहे हैं यहाँ पे?" And so we started moving into public spaces, and we started hosting a jam at Zamzama Park. And Zamzama Park is a park that I used to frequent at the time, and this was, so by this time we had figured out that internationally there are these acro yoga communities, and they host jams during the week where people get together and they connect with each other and then they play. So I was like, okay, let's do this here in Pakistan as well. But this is Pakistan. यहाँ पे आप लोगों को, specifically लड़कियों को, आप हवा में नहीं उड़ा सकते public places में.
I love this.
So we figured out, because when we first started, we started getting these stares from people कि लोग क्या कर रहे हैं और क्या हो रहा है, and that made us feel a little uncomfortable. So our jam was at 8 p.m. on a Thursday evening behind a really big bush in Zamzama Park. So we had very minimal eyeballs coming to us. And then जो हम लोगों को बुलाते थे, we would share the location and they'd be like, यहाँ पे jam हो रहा है. So we had a very shady jam on these Thursday evenings. Anyway, so that's kind of where the journey started. I was still doing corporate work. That was my day job. And on the side, I started practicing acro yoga. I started sharing the practice of acro yoga. Until I reflected to myself, and I was like, यार मैं तो गिर गिर के सीख रहा हूँ. Because I'm not a qualified yoga teacher or a qualified acro yoga teacher. So अगर मैं दूसरे लोगों को भी इसी तरह से सिखाता रहा, so I'm going to end up injuring someone. So क्यों ना मैं एक छोटा मोटा कोई कोर्स कर लूँ जिससे I know how to teach people, so I can bring safety in these spaces. And then I started to kind of look, and I was like, because Pakistan mein to is waqt koi acro yoga teacher hai nahi, so I started looking into the internet, and I find schools who teach these certifications on how to teach. And so I found a school, and I was like, is tarah ka yoga teacher mujhe banna hai na, is tarah ka acro yoga teacher mujhe banna hai. So that school had a little requirement, and that requirement was that in order to become an acro yoga teacher, you first have to be a yoga teacher. Because technically you are doing yoga poses in the air
Yes.
on top of another human being, right? When you're
Yes.
lifting people up. So I was like, okay, चलो शुरुआत करते हैं. और फिर, so I took some time off from work. I took some time off, a month off in particular, and I found another school in Thailand. This was right by the beach, and I got to spend that month there learning about yoga, learning about the philosophy of yoga and the history of yoga and the body alignment and the anatomy and breath work and meditation.
Yeah.
So all of these things that I had never been exposed to before.
Yeah.
But more than that, I was surrounded by people who didn't have many assets to their name, who didn't have the perfect job, who didn't have the perfect partner, those kids, those houses and gadiyan that people around me at the time aspired to have.
Yeah.
But these people had their passions, and these people had joy in their life. And up until then, I had never experienced that. I was like, इस तरह भी हो सकता है, इस तरह भी ज़िंदगी जी जा सकती है. Because किताबों में होता है, फिल्मों में होता है, but
Yeah.
असल में भी ऐसे हो सकता है. So that combined with the whole yoga experience flipped a switch inside me.
Yeah.
And when I came back to Karachi after that 1 month training, I was not the same person anymore. I was a yoga teacher, but I was also a believer in the universe. How when you put your mind towards something, the powers of the universe kind of make that happen for you. What you start seeking you.
Yeah.
And so I remember going back to my desk job, sitting, I used to work at this harborfront building, and
People would kill for such jobs, you know, in that building.
and for many people, yeah, that is the way life needs to be lived. But when I looked out into the ocean, I felt this sense of entrapment, and I felt like I need to get out of these glass walls somehow.
Yeah.
But I did not have the courage to quit work because I was used to a certain lifestyle. I was used to a certain income coming in.
Yes.
And so the universe took matters in its own hand. The company I was working for back then was going through an acquisition, and some layoffs were planned out. And as I heard that news, I remember sitting with my friend Anam, who used to work in the same building at a different company. And I remember telling her, Anam, I really wish I'm one of the people who gets laid off.
I don't know if anyone would ever say that, but I love this.
And Anam was like, are you out of your mind? Like, here people जो अपनी नौकरी बचाने की बात कर रहे हैं किसी तरह से. But what are you saying? Are you crazy? But that's when it had started to kind of initiate inside of me. And lo and behold, like a day before it happened, I saw it happen in my dream. I visualized the whole thing, and the next day I was called into a room and I was laid off. It was a harsh layoff. They said, hand over your laptop, hand over your badge, and leave. And even though a minute ago I was telling you that this is what I asked for,
Yes.
but when it actually happened, I was like, oh crap. This happened. What am I going to do now? How am I going to show my face to people? And so I didn't know what to do. So I ended up going to that same Zamzama park, sitting at a bench next to that big bush and bawling my eyes out because I didn't know what I was going to do. How am I going to show my face as a man in society? How am I going to provide for myself? And after an hour of being there and weeping my eyes out, I went back home at that exact time that I normally get home at, and I didn't tell anyone.
You didn't tell anyone?
It was a Friday, so there was a weekend, so I didn't have to explain myself for at least 2 days, right? Because that was my strategy in my head. Because maybe it's not
Saturday
real.
or Sunday किसी को बताना नहीं पड़ेगा कि अब ऑफिस तो जाना ही नहीं
Or
है.
maybe it's all a dream. I don't know. Right? 'Cause life is not making sense at this point. But this is where the universe comes in again. And interestingly, that same day that I get laid off, I had a meeting scheduled. And this meeting is scheduled at Studio X, which is a yoga studio in Karachi. And this is with Jeanette and Selena, who are both well-known yoga teachers. And they've called me in to meet me. And the idea here is not कि आप मुझे like hire me for a job or anything. The idea behind me setting up this meeting with them is I'm a newly qualified yoga teacher, and I would like to become a better yoga teacher. So if you have any classes where I can possibly substitute if a teacher is traveling, or maybe I can assist during classes, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
And they said, sorry, most of our classes are female only, because that's a thing as well in Pakistan, right? Because men pump iron at the gym and women do yoga. So there's many female only classes in the yoga world, particularly in 2017. And we don't really need any assistance in any of our classes. So they said, I was like, okay. But somewhere in that conversation, they said that we really like your energy. Would you like your own class? And I was like, okay. And during that conversation, they asked me, "Acha, tum kahan kaam karte ho?" And I'm like, this is where I work. And they were like, great, we'll do an after work yoga class, so you can even bring people from your office, and then it'll be perfect. And I was like, yes, I'm exactly यही चीज़ करेंगे. Because like I said,
अब तो ऑफिस यहाँ ही नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी चले.
Because I haven't even accepted to myself that this has happened to me a few hours ago. But Iman, what are the chances that the same day I get laid off from my corporate job is the exact same day I get offered my first yoga job? What? So clearly there is universe in action. It's giving me signs.
Yes.
But I don't believe it because I've been conditioned a certain way. So eventually, of course, like my parents also find out, family finds out, and they're like, okay, this has happened. तुम्हें yoga करना है, तुम ज़रूर करो, but do it on the side, get a real job. Okay? And I was like, okay, fine. So I start interviewing. I start going to places, interviewing, and I get a lot of rejections from a lot of places until finally I cleared through a lot of rounds in this marketing research agency.
Okay.
A quick background, my last job in marketing was in marketing research.
Okay.
And this company in particular was like, had that company as a client. So they were very happy to have someone from the inside join their team.
Yeah.
So I went through the written test, I went through the set of interviews, and I seemed like a really great prospect for them.
Right.
But right before they offered me the job, they gave me an assignment. And the assignment was an Excel sheet with a whole bunch of numbers, and they said, analyze this for us.
Okay.
And I looked at those numbers, and it was on a format that I was very familiar with because that's what I did day in and day out in my previous job. But there was a moment of reflection. And in that moment, I realized this is everything I hated about my previous job. Here I am, standing at a crossroad. Do I really want to do this to myself all over again? And that's when the answer was really clear to me, and the answer was no. I never did that assignment. I called them and said, thank you, but I am taking a different path. And instead, I made a call to the universe. And I spoke to the universe, and I said, I'm going to give this 1 year. In this 1 year, if things work out for me as a yoga teacher, I will carry on. If they don't work out, I realize that I need to put food on the table. I'm not the only person who got laid off from this company. Other people did too, and they're all going to find jobs eventually. I still have my degree, so worst case scenario, I'll start reapplying in a year. And that's when the journey started, from being a corporate slave to
I love that phrase. I love it. I absolutely love it.
to becoming a yoga instructor.
I want to talk about how from here chapter 2 began as far as yoga went, and how yoga teaching took place, how classes took place, because like you said earlier, acro yoga wasn't something that was happening in Karachi, and you'd gone to Thailand earlier. So how did that route happen? How did that whole thing transpire? Because today when anyone looks at your page, there's Slackline, there's a community, people know your name. I know that because I've been affiliated to yoga. I know people know you. They go like, Ajlaan, amazing. Literally, Ajlaan, phenomenal. But at that point in time, how did chapter 2 begin?
So it started off with 1 studio, then it became 2, 3, and 4. And initially it was quite a hustle. It wasn't super easy, even though I had decided, even though now I have a purpose in mind. But it was just a lot of compromise. So my first paycheck was 8,500 rupees. It wasn't something that I was used to back in my corporate job. But it just like, there was a shift in lifestyle. I had to give up a lot of things, from hanging out with friends at fancy places and taking trips with them, to managing myself on a smaller budget. And then from there, why am I losing my chain of thought? Let me take
Tell me about, say, Thailand. You wanted to go back to Thailand to learn more as far as acro yoga was concerned?
So yes, I wanted to go back to Thailand. There was the whole reason I became a yoga instructor was so I could become an acro yoga instructor, right? And I remember so I got laid off in November. And I did my teacher training in October. And in the beginning of November, I found this advanced yoga teacher training school, okay? And they had a little acro yoga component in them as well. So this isn't the original school that I wanted to go to. This was another school, because now I'm also interested in yoga and the joy that has brought to my life. The perspective that it has shown me, and the direction it has given me. So I was like, ye wala course karte hain, and this is also in Thailand. But this has like celebrity teachers, and it's one of the most pricey trainings out there. Okay? And then a few weeks later, I get laid off. So I don't know how I can afford it. Now beyond, let's tell you that. So beyond me not having enough money to afford the Thailand trip, A, I have to kind of survive my own expenses. And B, when I got laid off, there was, in that conversation they told, so I had a car from my company, right? And the way the company policy is, okay, you have to kind of earn that car over a period of 4 years. It had been 1.5 years since I had gotten that car, so I'd earned 1.5 years, and 2.5 years was still left.
Okay.
So even after the Provident Fund and the gratuity and everything, the company said that you have to pay this amount of money to us 3 months after this date. So not only did I have to kind of manage my expenses, I had to kind of save up money to manage to give back to the company so that I can keep my car that I was using to go around, to get to studios and to get to these private classes that I was doing at the time. And this training was like far off from my mind कि अब तो ये तो हो ही नहीं सकती ना, so this advanced training that I want to do. Anyway, so I do my hustle, and my hustle also includes not just doing yoga jobs. I'm teaching kids origami on the side, and I'm taking all sorts of odd jobs, anything that I can get to kind of survive and kind of make this money. At the end of 3 months, I made the money. Okay?
Wow.
And I call my company and ex-company, and I say, ये लो जी, पैसे लेने के लिए तैयार हैं, पैसे ले लो मुझसे. And they are very non-responsive to me somehow. They're like, हाँ हम आपको बताते हैं. I was like, fine. So one fine day, I'm doing my own practice. I'm kind of rediscovering meditation at that time as well. So I'm doing this meditation practice, and as soon as I finish, I get a call, and the call is from my ex-company, and they say, आपका check आया है. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Check मैंने तो नहीं भेजा आपको अभी तक. What are you talking about? They're like, नहीं आपके लिए check आया है. I'm like, what? So apparently there was some error in calculation, and instead of me paying them after the provident and the gratuity, they still had to pay some money to me despite cancelling out the car loan.
Okay.
So all of a sudden I'm rich. Well, not rich, but I have some money. So I have saved up money that I needed to give to them.
Yes.
And on top of that, I've gotten some more money as well.
Yeah.
And so my mind starts thinking, oh wait, I set an intention for myself to do this training, and now I have a certain sum of money. So maybe I can do that. It's still not enough to be able to afford that training. So this is what I wrote in my diary. I wrote, this is how much the certification costs. This is how much money I have right now. Somehow, if I get this amount of money, I will then borrow this amount of money and then go for the training. So I have this much, किसी तरह से इतने बस आ जाएं, तो बाकी मैं borrow कर लूँगा and I will go for this training. And a week goes by and I'm doing my meditation practice. I finish my meditation practice. 20 minutes later, the phone rings. It is from my ex-workplace. And they say, आपका check आया है. Like, what are you talking about?
अभी एक check तो दिया है आपने.
आप दे चुके हैं मुझे check. They're like, नहीं एक और check आया है. Like, what? So it turns out, so these companies have these performance evaluation cycles, right? And they offer bonuses to people at the end of that cycle, right?
Yeah.
So what happened at their end, this is what I was told. So I got laid off in November, but there's like a 3-month period. Even though I wasn't going to the office, I was technically an employee with them up until January, right? So there was 3 months where. So the performance evaluations had happened, and like I said, other people also got laid off. And जब उनके नाम call out हुए for that rating, they were like, ये तो जो है वो जा चुका है, तो इसको rate करने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है. Somehow my name got skipped from that exercise. The bell curve was made, the bonuses were given to people, but after it all already happened,
Yeah.
someone in HR pointed out that Ajlaan is also an employee with you through the year of 2017.
Yeah.
So they were forced to give me an average rating and give me a bonus. And that amount was exactly the same amount that I had written in my diary कि किसी तरह से ये पैसे आ जाएं तो फिर मैं दूसरा borrow करके I will take this trip. And so I had to keep my word. I borrowed that money and I took my second trip to Thailand, and this was the advanced yoga teacher training. I learned acro, I learned more about yoga, and I got to enhance my practice there. There's something else that happened on that trip. And initially, I was told that the Thailand visa is a month long. Right? And initially the intention was that I'm going to do this training for 1 month and I'm going to come back. But everyone else in the training was staying back and exploring Thailand after the trip. And last time I came to Thailand, I couldn't afford that at all because I had to get to work the next day after my training ended. But now I don't have a workplace to go to. And so I started asking around and I figured out that my visa is in fact for 2 months and not 1 month.
Right.
Now this advanced training is in Koh Samui, which is very close to Koh Phangan, which is where I did my initial yoga teacher training. So I called my school and I said, "Ke, I'm considering coming to Koh Phangan." And they were like, "Great, come." And so whenever in that school, their policy is, okay, when you do a yoga teacher training, you get some time to do almost like an internship, which is like free work that you do, but you get to teach classes to people who come to that school and just like get feedback from the senior teachers.
Okay.
I never got to do that the previous year because I had to be at work. And so they were like, you can do that. And I was like, great. And then maybe I've just done an advanced yoga teacher training as well. Maybe I can kind of host a workshop at the school and maybe teach some advanced yoga poses as well. And they were like, great, yeah, we can certainly do that. So we set up a time, we set up a date, and I made my trip down to Koh Phangan a month out, so after my training ended. When I got there, and once again, so in my mind, I was like, okay, मैं workshop कर रहा हूँ, workshop को हम इतने पे price करेंगे, approximately इतने लोग आ जाएंगे, तो इतने थोड़े से और पैसे बन जाएंगे जिससे मैं like I can afford staying for that extra month in Thailand. And I wasn't living a very fancy life. They also offered me accommodation in the school, so वो बच गया. So I was also having really basic food at the time. So I was like, किसी तरह से manage हो जाएगा.
Okay.
So I get to Koh Phangan and I'm standing there at the reception and they have no record of this conversation that I've had with them. The person I've been speaking to is no longer there. And I'm like, okay. चलो वो free classes तो मैं फिर भी teach कर सकता हूँ, right? So they were like, yes, you can still teach those classes. But what did end up happening was I taught those free classes. Through those free classes, people liked my style of teaching and they offered to do one-on-one sessions, private sessions. That meant some income came in from there. Not my original school, but I reached out to other places on the island. And another studio, another yoga space offered to host a handstand workshop with me. And I was able to make some money off of there.
Yeah.
A month later, I was doing my conversion Thai bahts to Pakistani rupees. And I had made that same amount of money that I had initially written कि मैं उस workshop से जो नहीं हुई वो अगर किसी तरह से हो जाए, so I'm gonna make this amount of money and I'm going to survive that extra month in Thailand. So yeah, and then as I came back, I continued to teach. The yoga well opened up. I started teaching classes there. And at the end of that year, I did my finances.
Yeah.
And I had made that year the same amount of money that I had in the year before that doing my corporate job. And that's when that conversation with the universe, that 1 year, do I continue? Do I go to a corporate job again? It was very, very clear to me that this is what I need to continue doing. Since then, the original acro yoga teacher training also happened. Along the way, I found slacklining. I joined the yoga slackers. I trained with them. I've taught retreats with them in Thailand as well. I've done my own retreats in Pakistan. I do corporate wellness work in offices, take people out on retreats. We talk about mindfulness. We spend conscious time together. I hosted the Karachi Yoga Festival for the first time last year, which was 50 teachers, 2 full days, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad.
I did not know this. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, so that manifested. That is also something. So when I did my advanced yoga teacher training, our final exam was doing a festival, right? So we had to create a yoga festival. 2018 में मैंने सोचा कि यार कितना अमेजिंग हो ना कि पाकिस्तान में भी कभी एक योगा फेस्टिवल हो. And yes, an intention was set then. But I was a new yoga teacher. I didn't really have a voice back then.
Yeah.
So 2019 में मैंने कोशिश की ना. I got a few teachers that I knew, and I had built a network by then. And everyone was really excited. और हमने date set की February 2020 की.
Yeah.
And COVID happened.
And COVID happened. Wow.
So that could never happen then. But the intention had still been set. Since 2020, I got a lot more experience in organizing events. Specifically when I taught internationally with the yoga slackers, teaching at their teacher training, assisting them, is when it really gave me insight on how these things are done in the yoga world. And that taught me so much that it helped me create the Karachi Yoga Festival. It took a lot of time and effort. It took 5 months of planning for me to finally pull that off.
Wow.
But yeah, it was beautiful. It was the first time when so many of us yoga teachers know each other through our Instagram handles.
Yes.
But it was the first time many of them were meeting with each other in the same place. So yes, it was about other people coming in, experiencing different styles of yoga, but it was also a space for yoga teachers to connect with each other.
Yeah.
And I saw since then these yoga teachers creating offerings together, so collaborating with each other and going on, taking people on retreats together. So it made me feel really nice that a space such as the Karachi Yoga Festival was able to facilitate this for other people as well.
You know, I'll just say one thing. I don't think I have anything to say. This was literally one of those episodes where I'm just laughing or saying wow or just like with this incredulous expression. You're one of those people where the universe really has your back. I don't know how many believe in it. I don't know how many get lost in life, like you'd said when we earlier spoke. I know I'm one of them. But you're an individual where the universe is like, I've got you, child. Don't you worry.
Yes, and speaking with you also reminds me of this because it's so easy to forget when you're faced with life and everything that's happening around you and people who do not believe. It's easy to forget. But when I look back at life, you know, it's these moments that I've always, like you said, I've always had that guiding hand.
You do.
So it's easier to believe, and it brings me back. And something that really helps is, of course, my own yoga practice. So now I don't teach as much because I also reflected back, and I know, because when I was teaching 4 classes a day, I was feeling very exhausted.
Yeah.
But now I'm in a space where I get to choose who I want to teach and how much I want to teach. And so that gives me a lot of time to do my own practice.
Yeah.
And that helps me stay connected, not just to my body, but also to the universe.
Thank you so much, Ajlaan. Honestly, this is one of those episodes, like I said, not much needs to be said from my end. Thank you so much for putting your story out there and for actually trusting us that we'll do justice to it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, guys. Honestly, this is one of those episodes where even if you don't believe in the universe or the power that there is a greater force looking out for you, I think it makes you believe. So thank you so much. Thank you.